Welcome back to the MAGA Arizona Agenda 2027 podcast with your host, Kevin Stankiewicz. Today, we're going to talk about 3 urgent matters that need to be addressed quickly before 2027. The 3 urgent issues we need to address in Arizona are 1, getting a more reliable refined fuel supply, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. 2, getting a more adequate fair share of the Colorado River water so we have the water we need to build the housing we need. 3, Arizona do its share to help defend Taiwan to keep our chip supply safe, at least until we can build our TMC plants completely out. The first problem, fuel reliability, comes from the fact that Arizona gets over half, or about half, of its refined fuel supply, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, from California refineries, the other half coming from Texas. Now, the Texas supply is pretty reliable. It goes through New Mexico, but it's pretty reliable. The problem with California is that Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is over-regulating and over-taxing refineries to the point that they're shutting down and going out of business. That seriously imperils our supply of refined fuels. Nevada's situation is even worse. They're even more dependent on California. Arizona cannot afford to lose half of its gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel supply, nor can Nevada lose the vast majority of its supply from California. Even more critical is that military bases in the western U.S., California naval Air Force bases, and also bases in Arizona and Nevada, need to have a reliable fuel supply for national defense. Democratic California Governor Newsom's solution to the shutting oil refineries in California, that's his fault, is to import refined fuel from Asia, from China or other Asian countries. This is completely unacceptable. That means our economy and our West Coast defense is completely dependent on fuel supplies that will probably be cut off the moment a war in the Western Pacific between China invading Taiwan starts. New housing construction in Arizona is severely limited by water supply. Home builders need to prove they have a assured water supply for 100 years for each housing unit they build. Therefore, to increase housing construction, we need additional reliable water supplies. And there are no quickly, readily available new water supplies in internal Arizona. We have to look at the Colorado River. The largest share of Colorado River water goes to California, and the largest amount of that water is actually used to grow alfalfa cattle feed. A lot of that is actually exported to China and other Asian countries. So we're wasting our valuable southwestern water supply, not on housing Arizonans and Nevadans, but we're growing alfalfa to feed cattle to provide steaks for Chinese Communist Party leaders and Communist Red Army generals. We might not have enough military aircraft available and ready in the Western Pacific to fully, effectively defend the Philippines from Chinese attack and Taiwan from Chinese invasion. President Trump needs to invoke the Defense Production Act on the California refineries to keep them open, to keep a reliable and safe supply of fuel for southwestern military bases and the whole economy, including the whole military supply chain. He needs to help these refineries escape the onerous regulations and taxes in California that are putting them out of business. One potential way of doing that is to actually have the Department of Energy acquire the refineries, then lease them back to the refiners. That way they are federal property and exempt from state regulations and taxes. We need to rationally reallocate water supplies to economically better uses, from low return on investment uses like growing cattle feed in the desert in summer to really high benefit uses like building housing that's desperately needed in the Southwest, especially Arizona and Nevada. One possible way of reallocating water on the Colorado to more economically beneficial uses like housing is to put a very low tax on all water that is transmitted through federal water projects. Therefore, the water tax would be very low, so as to only discourage water wasting low value agriculture, but not hurt high value agriculture. It would also be in a personal exemption per person, so your typical household would not have to pay anything. If possible, you could have a higher tax rate for water for crops that are exported and a lower rate for water that's used to grow crops that are sold domestically. This low water tax will effectively reallocate water from low-value agriculture in the Imperial Valley of California to desperately needed housing in Arizona and Nevada. The quickest way to increase our useful military aircraft supply to help defend our allies in the Philippines and Taiwan and our own U.S. territories like Guam is to rehabilitate and bring back into service retired military aircraft that are stored carefully at the Boneyard in the Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. This rehabilitation of older military aircraft in Tucson will create jobs in the local economy in Tucson to rebuild and refit these aircraft. We could rehire retired military pilots who flew these planes before to both test them after refit and to train a new generation of pilots how to fly these aircraft quickly and effectively. Plus, they get a little extra bonus retirement pay. If these older refit aircraft are deemed not good enough for modern U.S. military standards, but are still useful, we should probably provide them, along with training, munitions, and spare parts, to our allies with smaller military budgets, like the Philippines. The Philippines, as a useful American ally, should be helped to be more capable of defending themselves and providing us assistance within their budget. Our ally, the Philippines, is being constantly harassed by the Chinese Navy. We should help them defend themselves and be a better, more useful ally with us in helping defend Taiwan. To help defend our country and to secure our economy, we need to address three issues quickly. One, use the Defense Production Act to keep the refineries in California open and supplying us with reliable fuel supplies. Two, reallocate water in the Colorado River to better uses, including desperately needed housing. And three, make the best use of military aircraft stored at the Boneyard in Tucson to defend our country with a possible conflict with China, or hopefully scare them and prevent it. Thank you for watching the MAGA Arizona Agenda 2027 podcast today on critical urgent issues. Please like and subscribe, and then follow for future episodes that are more in-depth on topics of how we can make Arizona great again.